Hey guys, today we're going to talk about another anime from the October season that you're sure to enjoy. We have a super intelligent protagonist, a group of absurdly strong characters, and the guy knows how to be badass in every situation. If you're in the mood for part 2, you already know. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down here to give us your support and show that you want the sequel. Without further ado, let's get to it. At the beginning of it all, a group of 6 friends decide to become adventurers. Their goal? To travel the world in search of treasure chests, conquer riches, and achieve glory. One of the boys, Mills, makes it clear that the group's only goal is to become the world's greatest heroes. What's more, he dreams of going to the capital Zebrud. A few years after this conversation between the children, Kai walks through the streets and explains how, in the Imperial capital, treasure hunters are treated like real stars. They travel the world in search of ruins known as treasure chests. These vaults hold many precious items, but on the other hand, this work is extremely dangerous, as the adventurers face monsters called ghosts. As Kai walks around the capital, he mentions the First Step Clan, a highly respected elite group. They are currently conducting interviews in a bar with the aim of recruiting new members. Kai takes the opportunity to explain the importance of clans. They function as societies where members benefit from each other. He points out that although a hunter can reach a certain level alone, it is crucial to join a good group in order to grow stronger and progress. Regretting his own situation, Kai reveals that he still hasn't managed to join a group. Suddenly, a girl approaches, asking if he is also looking for a clan. She introduces herself as Huda Rubek and says that she has just been promoted to level 3. Kai introduces himself as Cry Andre, but doesn't greet her, leaving Huda with her hand out. Ignoring the gesture, Huda comments on the Vault of the White Wolf's Nest, a mission she tried to complete and which brought her many challenges. Huda has decided to join a group to advance as a hunter. In the middle of the conversation, however, she is interrupted by a man who ridicules her, saying that the capital is no place for weak hunters like her, and that being at level 3 means nothing. Huda corrects him, saying that the group doesn't require a minimum level to apply for vacancies. When she realizes that he won't leave her alone, Huda challenges him to a fight. At that moment, 2 representatives of the group notice the confusion in the queue and ask them both to calm down. Otherwise, they will lose their chance to join the clan. They remind them that hunters should never draw their weapons in public, as Huda did. After the incident, they finally enter the bar where the selection of hunters takes place. Huda is impressed by the caliber of the hunters around her, as it's her first time there. Cry comments that it's the 5th time he's been there. Observing the hunters, Huda notices a specific group and asks who they are. Cry explains that they are the Ark Brave, also known as the Children of the Holy Spirit, the strongest group present. They managed to complete a level 7 vault with only 6 members and are considered to be of the most elite. The group's leader, Ark Roden, is a legendary figure, and any hunter he accepts into his group is destined for success. However, Cry reveals that he has never seen Ark accept new members at events like this. In the middle of the conversation, the man from before interrupts them again. He notices an empty table at the event, and Greg explains that this is the table of the group that founded the First Step Clan, known as Strike or Strange Grief. Years ago, they arrived in the capital and, being full of talent, have become one of the most respected groups. Cry comments that this is the group of his childhood friends, and Greg adds that they are accepting new members, which explains the great movement in the place. Suddenly, a red-haired boy starts shouting, asking to be accepted into the Strange Grief. Tino, a huntress, approaches to put him in his place, saying that she is the one who deserves to be in the group. The bar becomes agitated, with everyone pushing aside tables and chairs to watch the confrontation. After all, the fewer the candidates, the better. Seeing the confusion about to begin, Cry decides to discreetly leave the bar, but before he can escape, Tino notices him and approaches him suspiciously, calling him Master. At that moment, Ark Rodan also notices Cry and reveals that he is actually the clan master and leader of the Strange Grief. Surprised, Cry tells more of his story, saying that years ago, when his group arrived in the capital, they completed treasure chests for beginners in record time. However, Cry always felt inferior to the other 5 members, believing that he was an ordinary hunter and that if he continued with them, he would end up hindering the group. Despite all his friends being incredible and never complaining about his level, Cry decides to leave the group on his own. However, the boys don't seem to understand his decision, and Mills suggests that Cry take over the leadership of the group, since they don't have a leader yet. Cry becomes even more confused, realizing that his friends didn't even hear what he said about leaving the group. Over the years, he ended up becoming the leader unintentionally, and since then, he has always thought about retiring from the hunting life as soon as possible. Back in the present, Greg and Huda are still shocked to discover that the young man is the leader of First Step. Just then, Ark Ross approaches Cry to mock him, mentioning that he's often late because he's too sleepy. Tino quickly intervenes to defend his master. Cry tries to explain himself, saying that he simply overslept and didn't have time to get ready properly, but he still feels that no one is listening to him, including the other hunters and Ark Ross. Seeing Ark repeatedly disrespect Cry, Tino asks Cry to expel him from the clan, but Ark ignores the request. Instead, he asks if Cry has found any potential new members yet. Cry then asks if Ark would accept a recommendation, to which Ark replies that he would trust any hunter Cry suggests, as he has great confidence in him. Tino is excited about the possibility of being chosen, as she was more than ready to join the group. Meanwhile, Gilbert begins to draw attention to himself, eager to be chosen for the Strange Grief. Upon analyzing the boy, Cry realizes that he wouldn't be much help in his current state, but believes that, with the right training, Gilbert could be polished. However, Cry begins to doubt his own experience in evaluating someone, admitting that any suggestion he makes would be pure luck. Nevertheless, Cry decides to recommend Gilbert. Before recommending him, Cry explains to the boy that the most important trait in a hunter is strength, because without it, the whole group could be in danger. He challenges Gilbert to show that he has the ability to not lose, stating that only on this condition would he appoint him to Ark Rodan. Cry then mentions that he has never lost a fight, but quickly thinks to himself that this is easy to say, since he has never been in a real battle. To test the hunters, Cry makes an announcement. He will recommend to Ark Brave whoever manages to get the treasure in his hand. He throws a ring into the middle of the hunters, causing a frantic scramble for the item. The ring ends up falling into Gilbert's lap, but Tino acts quickly, kicking the boy in the face and throwing him away. However, she also loses the ring. While everyone is distracted looking for the ring, Cry takes the opportunity to leave discreetly and go home. The next day, he reads in the papers about the riot that took place at the Ark Brave recruitment drive, with the entire bar exploding during the melee. Fortunately, no civilians were hurt, but Ava Renfield, the clan's deputy headmistress, informs him that the Adventurers Association wants to talk about what happened. As for Ark, Eva comments that he just laughed when he read the article. On hearing this, Cry asks Ava to put the repair of the bar on Ark's bill, and also leaves the responsibility of dealing with the association to Ark. However, Ava informs him that the association wants to talk specifically to Cry, and he reluctantly decides to go. Cry knew that if he didn't go to the meeting place, Lieutenant Gark would probably come after him. So he asked to go with an escort, fearing that he would be attacked, but Eva reassured him that no one would do anything against him at that moment. Determined, Cry heads for the scene and apologizes for all the trouble he's caused. Eva hurriedly tries to calm Cry down, but he continues to apologize, explaining that only the building was destroyed, but the people were unharmed. Gark then explains that, despite not having received an official complaint, the First Step clan needs to set an example for the other hunters. That's why he can't just let Cry get away with this. Realizing that he will have to face the consequences, Cry knows that he will be forced to do one of the Adventurers Association's boring jobs, known as punishments. Trying to escape the situation, Cry tries to convince Gark that the incident wasn't that serious. However, Gark insists that he choose a punishment straight away. Cry, without much choice, chooses a level 3 mission called Bone Collection. When he leaves, Gark comments to his secretary that Cry, despite everything, still has the same energy as always, and that he has chosen one of the most dangerous missions, regardless of the consequences. Meanwhile, Cry meets Tino and discovers that she was the one who found the ring he threw in the previous confusion. Cry invites her to help with a job for the Adventurers Association, but Tino immediately runs away when he hears the invitation. Then Cry, using one of his tracking treasures, finds her again. Tino, annoyed, complains that she would have liked to have been taken for an ice cream, but Cry reassures her that she won't have to go on the mission alone. Cry explains that she will form a group with Huda to complete the level 3 mission, watching everything with a sadistic smile. Cry, who is reminiscent of the protagonist of Eminence in Shadow, or a true master of deception, uses his skill at manipulation and small talk to make everything work, even though he has no special skills. In a flashback, Cry recalls his first days as a hunter in the capital with his childhood friends. Soon after arriving, he expresses his concerns, saying that he feels he is a burden to the group and that perhaps he should go home. Luke, one of his companions, reprimands him, saying that he is worrying too much about something trivial. To show his confidence, Luke steps forward and kicks in the guild doors, raising his sword and challenging the best swordsman in the place to come forward. Elle, another member of the group, joins Luke's side, proclaiming herself to be the best thief in the world and announcing that they are there to register as treasure hunters. During the conversation, Luke says that a man's true strength lies in his usefulness and not in the weapon he wields. That's why he uses a wooden sword, which he says makes him the strongest swordsman of all. Meanwhile, Cry continues with the group's registration procedure until the receptionist asks him to choose a name for the group. Realizing that they hadn't thought of it yet, Cray sees an opportunity to get rid of the burden and proposes a strange and ridiculous name on purpose: Strange Griff. He hopes that with such a weird name, people won't take the group seriously, making it easier for them to leave. However, his companions surprise Cry by praising the name he has given them, trying to motivate him to stay in the group. Even with this peculiar name, the Strange Griff group achieves great success, reigning in the golden age of treasure hunters and gaining prominence, including Cry, who becomes a valuable member. Back in the present, Greg is still incredulous and wonders if Cry really is the leader of the Footprints clan. The people around them begin to praise him, calling him 1,000 Tricks, a very famous level 8 hunter. Tino, for his part, asks everyone to kneel before the master, now that they know who he really is. Cray, a little uncomfortable, asks her not to exaggerate too much, explaining the origin of the nickname 1,000 Tricks. Cray explains that 1,000 Tricks was the second nickname he received as a leader of the Strange Griff clan. Leaders who stand out end up winning special titles from the association and become idols. On hearing this, Gilbert expresses incredulity, saying that Cry couldn't possibly be 1,000 Tricks, as he doesn't look like someone who trains that much. Tino gets angry and teases the boy, but is quickly reprimanded by Cry. Even so, she makes it clear that she can't imagine working alongside Gilbert, since he only talks and doesn't really act. Gilbert, for his part, continues to challenge Cry, saying he doesn't believe he's level 8. Greg intervenes, calling Gilbert an idiot for trying to start a fight he can't sustain. Cray, however, ignores the boy, leaving him free to think what he wants, and asks Greg and Huda to help with the mission. He also suggests that Tino seek help from the clan if necessary. When he has finished what he has to do, Cry prepares to leave, but Gilbert challenges him again, proposing a fight and saying that if Cry defeats him, he will join the mission. Cry accepts the challenge, but asks Tino to fight in his place. As they come face to face, Gilbert remembers the mistake he made on the day of the ring, but promises he won't make the same mistake again, declaring that he will fight with everything this time. Tino, for his part, warns her that even though he is level 4, he will not defeat her so easily, making it clear that although he considers himself inferior to his master, he will not lose to Gilbert. To prove her confidence, she drops her weapons and decides to fight only with her hands. Cry observes the scene and recognizes that Tino isn't entirely wrong, as she really does seem to be stronger than Gilbert. However, he mentions that the real problem is the Purgatory Blade that Gilbert carries. Feeling underestimated, Gilbert decides to fight without his weapon too. As the fight begins, Tino surprises everyone by turning Gilbert into a bird with a sharp kick to the face. Gilbert, furious, tries to counterattack, but Tino overpowers him, pinning his arms and warning him not to disrespect his master again if he doesn't want to feel any more pain. Finally, she defeats Gilbert with a single blow, impressing everyone with the strength of the strange Griff clan. At that moment, Gilbert remembers his past, when he trained hard to become a hunter. Ever since he was a child, he had beaten adults at swordsmanship, which motivated him to continue his training intensely. On arriving in the capital, Gilbert formed a group and began to conquer various treasure chests, gaining confidence to the point where he believed that no one could defeat him. However, seeing that he was still willing to fight, Tino suggested that he use his sword. Gilbert refuses at first, but soon admits that in a real battle, Tino would easily defeat him. Cry observes the situation and realizes that Gilbert has probably left his old group because of the difference in strength between them. On hearing this, Gilbert asks how Cry knows this. Cry replies that he's been through the same thing, but Gilbert misinterprets everything, believing that Cray is the strongest of the group and is staying with them out of generosity, supporting weaker people. When Cry examines Gilbert's sword, he is excited to test the blade and finds that it is a good weapon, albeit simple. Seeing the flames emanating from it, Gilbert is surprised, as he had never managed to awaken the full power of the Blade of Purgatory, even though he owned it. As they continue their journey, Cry explains that mana is the fundamental substance of the world, and that treasure chests are phenomena that occur when spirit lines and other forces condense mana, manifesting alternative worlds based on memories extracted from the world's core. He mentions that the White Wolf's Nest is one of these vaults, originally inhabited by lupine monsters called Silvermund. This species became extinct due to rampant hunting for their fur, which resulted in the creation of a vault in this location, along with a bloody wolf ghost. As he describes all this, Cry begins to feel a chill run down his spine, as he understands that the place was generated from the vengeful feelings of the extinct race of wolves. After hearing Cry's explanation about the level 3 safe and its security, being in 4 people, Evo changes the subject and comments on the impressive display of skill he gave with Gilbert's sword. Cray, however, plays it down, saying that the Purgatory Blade is easy to handle, considering that Gilbert himself was able to use it without much practice. Cry then ponders buying the boy's sword, but Evo reminds him that he already has several relics and that it would be a waste to acquire another one. In addition, she mentions the loan he had already taken out from Citra, warning him to be more cautious. After this conversation, Cry meets up with his friends, one of whom mentions a ghost that appeared on the road north, destroying an entire caravan, even with an escort. The Knights of the Third Order began recruiting people to hunt the creature, which, according to witnesses, looked like a wolf. This leads them to believe that the ghost came from the White Wolf's Nest. Upon hearing this, Cry is in denial, trying to convince himself that it's all just speculation and that Tino will be fine. However, his friend comments that the strength of the White Wolf's Nest ghost has increased unexpectedly, to the point where they are considering raising the level of the vault. Cry's concern grows, especially when he discovers that a high-level wizard and his partners have also disappeared in the area. Disguising his concern, he tells his friends that he sent Tino there, only to intensify his training. After the conversation, Cray decides to go out for a breather and calms down, telling himself that Gilbert is a skilled swordsman and that, with the Blade of Purgatory in hand, he'll be fine. However, he worries when he remembers that the boy was carrying the sword after Cry used it. Meanwhile, Tino and his group realize that the place is really dangerous. Tino believes that everything has been calculated by Cry, who must have a plan in mind to send them there. However, Greg disagrees with this deduction and reminds Tino that they only met yesterday, showing that he doesn't fully trust Cry and his intentions. Cray begins to realize that he has sent his group on a mission without planning properly. With the time running out, he realizes that there's no longer any way to call for help, and decides to go after them alone. Meanwhile, Tino and the other members of the group come across a giant ghost in the shape of a wolf, who surprises them by being equipped with armor and a sword. Back in the city, Cry gathers some specific relics that he believes are necessary and puts them in a giant sack, preparing to go to meet his allies. On the way, he is confronted by Ava, who questions what he is doing with that huge sack. Cray, trying to disguise himself, makes up an excuse, claiming that he's just going out for a walk. Ava, however, quickly realizes that he is going after Tino and the group. Nevertheless, Cry insists that he is only going out to explore and, without further ado, activates a relic that allows flight, leaving Ava behind. As she watches Cry walk away, she remembers one major flaw with this relic. Although it allows a person to take off and continue gliding, there is no method of pausing or landing safely. Ava wonders how Cry intends to solve this. Guys, this guy is the biggest cheater I've ever seen. Seriously, he's like Shadow, always getting his own way. Now I just want to see how he's going to get out of this, since he's thrown the group into a suicide mission. So, if you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any episodes. There's more next week. Thanks,